Thank you. Recordings in progress. Good evening, y'all. This is Golf Platoon. Evenings and weekends. I'm your host, Jordan. We're doing week 1, day 3, JavaScript review. JavaScript is the front end language that we teach. It's a solid language. I'm not going to complain about it at all during this lecture. Um, Ask me any questions you have, but you get real deep, I might have to look them up because I'm not a JavaScript expert. I just use it where I need to. But y'all are going to be JavaScript experts because you need to. Getting started. So these are some nice fundamentals. If anyone ever asks you any of this stuff in a coding interview, okay, this one, maybe that's a silly question. But you should know JavaScript is one of the core technologies of the World Wide Web. You would be hard pressed to find a website that doesn't have any JavaScript. Except spacejam.com, I think, has no JavaScript. Anyone checked out spacejam.com in a while? I think it's been re-put up on the internet. It's like a running joke, a legend, if you will, in the front end space. It's all HTML, CSS. It's goofy. It's wacky. The internet was in its early days, and people didn't really know what a website should be, but it was a goofy, funny thing, right? It's like a weird interactive extension of the movie. That doesn't use JavaScript, I believe. It might today. It sure didn't. Almost everything else uses JavaScript. JavaScript is a very easy way to get things to function on the front end because JavaScript runs in the browser. If anything else ran easily in the browser, maybe JavaScript wouldn't be so popular. But I don't think there's a problem with it all being run by one major popular language. It's a lot better than 100 different languages, because the browser doesn't want to account for all these different languages. You want to keep it light. So JavaScript's the way it runs. JavaScript is a high-level language. Does anyone know what that means?
It means you got to be more specific with your syntax.
Um,
No.
if I recall, the low level was assembly language, and you had to specify every single detail. And I can't recall as far as with the high level, but I know we don't have to do all of that stuff. But yeah.
You're on the right track, but what you're talking about specifically is static versus dynamic typing. In many languages, Python and JavaScript not included, if you set a variable, like this is JavaScript, right? I can say let dog equal lucky. I don't have to, that's it. JavaScript's going to run that. It knows what to do with that. No problem. Oh, I got a console.log though. Let me get ahead of myself. Goodness, don't help me with that. I don't know why I feel the need to type this out, but I am. Yeah, it's the end of the day. I'm getting sleepy. No, lucky. This JavaScript knows at runtime that that's a string. It assumes that's a string. Why wouldn't it be a string? What if I do that? JavaScript can assume that's a string. Does it always teach it, or does it always treat it like a string? No, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it thinks it's a number. That's a JavaScript thing. In many languages, you'd have to do something like, no, whatever. I'm making this up. It's not real JavaScript. But you have to specify what the type is when you create this variable, right? That would be a statically typed language. Seems like a lot of hoopla, but we're not going to run into things where people are trying to do wacky stuff like this, divided by like person or whatever. Like JavaScript will run a lot of things and not tell you there was a problem. And because it is dynamically typed, because it assumes typing, it's really bad about letting you shoot yourself in the foot a bit. just to verify, I'm still sharing my screen. Are y'all looking at my VS Code? Okay.
Yeah, I see it.
All right,
Yeah.
sorry. I didn't trust it because I didn't see no outline like I thought I should. High level language basically means like it's designed for people to read. When you're looking at old stuff like assembly or I mean shoot, even like C++ has some weird syntax. C sure does. The stuff I know it's not as great as Python, like in its syntax, but this is saying, hey, to the console, I would like you to log something. That makes a lot of sense to me. You'll see a lot with its, syntax function. I stuff like that. Like this is pretty obvious to guess that this is a function. If you know what a function is, or that's a common word in programming, you're very quickly be able to look at JavaScript and say, oh, okay, well, that's a function, right? High level is designed with you in mind, I suppose, is the way to look at it. High level is meant to be read by humans. There's a term that's used many different ways that I like, but I think I'm misusing it. According to some, people say duck typing. If it looks like a duck, it is a duck. If it looks like a function, it's a function, stuff like that. That's what high level is. That's why people like JavaScript as a starting language. That's why people like Python as a starting language. Because they are good starter languages does not mean they're, baby languages. You can do anything you want with them, but they're easy to learn because they are, high level, easy to be read. With the creation of Node.js by Google, you can leverage JavaScript to write server-side code. I typed the word node. It ran this code. I don't have to run this in a browser. That's all that's saying. You'll see some differences between running something in Node and running something on the browser, but they're few and far in between. We're not going to be encouraging you to write a lot of JavaScript in the browser, but that is something you can do. Everything should be able to run in a browser. Data types. We got strings. All languages have strings. Anything enclosed in a single, double, or backticks, it's all good. You're not going to see this flare up. That's all fine. The difference between single quote, double quote, really nothing. Keep it consistent. Don't use single quotes and then double quotes somewhere else. It makes it janky. But what about these? What do these do? What's this different?
Concatenation.
Close interpolation.
There you go.
Right?
Yes. Concatenation would be this, some other stuff, right? Or more specifically,
That's right. Joining of things, of sentences, rather than pulling it down.
yeah, you do something like that. I think this is still fine. That would be concatenation. While I'm at it, it's week one. If y'all see me do stuff on my VS Code that you don't know how to do, just ask. Like, how'd you do that, Jordan? There's a lot of pretty useful, things you can do, like multi-line, all that. If y'all want to know, just ask. All I did to grab this was I pressed Option, I hit Shift, and I went down. Don't ask me what that is on PC. It's probably something silly. I can grab it with Option and go up and down. But these are all things you can look up. Just knowing that they exist is enough. I don't know every VS Code command ever. I know the ones that I fiddle with. But I do know when I forget, I can Google VS Code. How do you grab a line and move it? How do you duplicate a line? How do you drop down a line? Stuff like that. So just mentioning that. If you ever see me do something and you want me to explain it, just stop me. Oh, hey, I asked a question that was on the next line. Interpolations, we substitute a variable into a string. This works just like that. A little more wordy than how we get it done in Python, but works about the same. I like this. This is called fancy strings, format strings. Being able to write it directly in here, really nice. Numbers. It's a float number, but it's a number all the same. 55, integer. These are integers. It's floats. You can add them, you can subtract them, you can divide, multiply, anything you want to do. Questions about strings or numbers? Boolean. There are two options, true and false. You do cool stuff with Booleans. You ever have a toggle, toggle equals true. If you you wanted something to work on an action, do something like toggle equals opposite toggle, something like that. If I had to put this on a button, this would constantly be switching between true and false. We'll show you that some other day when we need to toggle, but y'all understand what I'm doing here? I don't want to get too into that. If you've had to fuss with it before, that's an interesting way to look at it. We'll come back around that React. I don't know why I brought that up now. Undefined, a variable may have a value, but it's currently not defined. You can set something as undefined, or you could request a variable that doesn't exist, right? What if I wanted to console.log frog, but up here I set let dog equal lucky. Made a mistake, doesn't matter. JavaScript will run it. Oh, all kinds of issues. Frog is not defined. It's undefined. So we didn't define frog, we defined dog. You're not often going to just set something undefined unless you intend to change it later and you don't know what it's going to be. I don't personally like this. Again, I'm not a JavaScript aficionado. I would do something like let number equal 0 or something, or let it equal an empty array, something that gives me an idea of what it's supposed to be in the future. I don't really like undefined because it's just kind of leaving something broken. Unless that's what you want. Null. A variable explicitly has no value. If you want something to not have a value, let's set it to null, please. I would like to define it. I would like it to be null. There are times when you'd want to do this. Specifically, I think, I don't know, setting booleans maybe. I guess I'd set a boolean null. That makes sense to me. Arrays. In lots of languages, lists of ordered values or unordered values, things like that, very common. What's more common in kind of your lower level languages, stuff that's closer to the metal, if you will, are vectors and arrays. Generally, in some other languages, you have to define, the maximum length of a list or an array, or you have to, add onto it or refer, specify whether it's going to get larger or where its, pointer is for where that's saved. No such thing in JavaScript. Wild West. An array is an infinitely wide, not infinite, but like it's as big as you need it to be list. You can have 2 values in it. You can have 220 million values in it. It's just going to get bigger or smaller as you need. We can iterate through arrays. We can pluck things from arrays. We can pop things from arrays. We can do all kinds of fun stuff. Again, this is review, so I'm not going to get too into it. But if we have questions about any of these, let me know. Holds an order list of values. Values can be anything from strings, numbers, objects, even other arrays. Let's make sure they're one of these things and not a bunch of these things. I don't really want to see a list of strings and numbers and objects. You can give me a use case for that. But generally, we need to keep all the same stuff in a list. Once you put something in an array, it stays in that place forever until you alter that array. You can rely on it always being there. I guess you could think of it like a old person's pillbox, or anyone who has a pillbox. I'm going to update that. That's not very nice. Yeah, fine. We can pull them by their index. That's generally the best way, I guess, to get it. Remember, we start at 0. Computers start at 0. 1 is your second place. So if I had most days of the week, oh jeez, it's got a nice little friendly copy thing. I'm not even using it. Ba, 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 ba. That ought to pull. Oh, it's even got it there. But I mean, we can always test it, right? Ooh, put it not copyright. How did that not copy that down? Oh, because I put that in there. I'm silly. I should have done this, y'all. Also, I'm a Vim guy, so you're gonna see me do some slow stuff in VS Code. Deal with it. I don't like the Vim plugin. Objects. Everything's an object in JavaScript. Everything's an object in a lot of things. But specifically, when we're talking about objects in JavaScript, we're talking about these things. We're talking about key value pairs, a variable with key value pairs. I don't love the name object because we're going to use it and it's going to get mixed up with some other things down the road. That's all right. We don't do a lot of object-oriented programming in JavaScript. We try to avoid that because it has nothing to do with these objects. These are different. These are called dictionaries in Python. That's all. I'm going to not talk about other languages unless you'll specifically ask, but works good for people. It can have keys, values. They don't all have to be the same type because objects can be complex things. You can have an object within an object. You have a list within an object. You can have functions within an object if you really want to get wild with it. But we're going to get more into object-oriented programming if we do that, and we're not going to be using objects for that. To refer to the value, you grab the name, or sorry, you reference it by the key. I don't like going off script too much, but does anyone know how I'd get a list of these? What if I don't want what if I don't know what the keys are? What if I need to see all the keys?
I use
Is it-
object.keys.
I think that's right. Let's find out.
Capital O. Capital O.
Object dot keys like this. Is that right? Does that run? Hey, it runs. Exactly. That can be useful. If you don't know what this is, if you don't see this entire object, you don't really know what's going on with it, this can be handy. Sometimes I want to iterate through an object. And keep in mind this, returns this. What if I wanted to spit out every single key, or sorry, every single value? Is this a thing in JavaScript? I don't think it is. Of course it is in JavaScript. Well, it's not a thing in other languages. Maybe I want to do something for each key using the key. Once I've got that, I could set a is equal to. Too far. I wonder what the delete to command is. Yeah, I could do something like that, and then I could, iterate through this list of keys and, for each key do something, whatever. That's an option. It's nice to know that exists. I always look for that in Python and JavaScript. Sometimes you don't know what they look like, but the values is nice too. Different types of variables. Var, the most common variable. I would disagree. I don't see a lot of var in my experience. Generally, let and const are a little bit stronger, a little bit safer to use. If you're using var, it's because you intend to rewrite that variable, right? Again, I'm not a JavaScript aficionado, but if I say oops, dog is equal to lucky, this should always, say lucky. That's no problem. But if someone else renames their dog later on, oh, that's right. Oh, squid now. And no, nothing's gonna be upset about that. Believe you let shouldn't be happy with that. In fact, it's very mad at that. What does it say? Well, pretty easy. By the way, start getting used to reading these while these output errors are simple, because they're only going to get more complicated, and you got to get used to reading the syntax errors themselves. Oftentimes, your answer is right here. Not very often in JavaScript. JavaScript has doo-doo error handling or error outputs. That is not a subjective thing. That is an objective known fact. Go write in Rust for 20 minutes and tell me if you think this is nice. This is not nice. Python, looking at you, buddy, you also suck. Both of these languages, bad at outputs. This is one of the few cases it's pretty helpful, but you'll get frustrated with JavaScript real quick with its errors. They're not always so clear. JavaScript is a Wild West language. That's why you got to be strict with it, careful with it. These output errors not always going to be helpful, but today this one's helpful.
I have a
Ready to
question
declare.
in the vein of this, if that's okay.
Sure.
I'm fairly familiar with ES5, not ES6. Is there a difference in scope when you use var and let as well, or is what you just displayed really the only difference?
No, there's a scope difference inside and outside of functions. A reassignment will only be accessed within the function. If I change let me pause the video and verify this real quick. Your screen share is paused, but the video is not paused.
We can circle back to it. We'll probably cover scope, so.
Yeah, we will. Does that not pause the screen though? Oh, stop share. Am I not recording? I'm definitely recording, right? Pause the share. Oh, there we go. Guys, I'm losing my mind. Oh, good. We're back. There is scoping changes between var and let that I don't want to dig into right now because I'm not explaining it easily, but let can be mutated. Let's use let. Var can be reassigned. Generally, that's not a great thing to do. That can cause problems in your code for this use case for everything. Just be warned. If you don't want something to change at all, we got const. Works out real good. There is no equivalent in Python. Everything is mutable in Python. Printing, console.log, that's fine. Console.log is not the only way to log things. There's also stuff like console.table, which I'm not really good at, but it does exist. Did I make that up? It's not console.table, is it? I'm going to share that in Slack. Let's pull it up. We're using console.log 90% of the time in JavaScript. Keep in mind, that's just writing to the terminal. That's not returning, right? It's not doing anything to the code whatsoever. Whatever you do in console.log, that is only going to your terminal. That that pops it out here. Nothing else in your code knows about that. If you want a function to return something, it needs to be returned, assuming you're not mutating a variable outside of the scope of that function. Yep. Arithmetic operators. Hopefully, you're not doing a lot of math with JavaScript, but sometimes you need to. And like most languages, we've got our basic operators. Plus, minus, multiplication, exponent, division, modulus. I don't remember this from math class, but it's pretty sweet. Modulus returns the remainder. This can be quite handy. There are a lot of use cases for modulo. Just know that this exists. Very handy. Does anyone understand? Does anyone not understand this? 10 divided by 3. 3 goes into 10 3 times. We don't care about that. We only want to know what's left. So 9, 10, 1 is the remainder. When you want the remainder, you got a modulus operator. Logic operators. This is JavaScript special right here. Double equals, triple equals, single not equals, double not equals. What's the difference?
I believe a double equals only takes in like the value, but not the type, but the triple equals takes in both. Something to that effect.
That
Like
is
this,
pretty much exactly right. The technical correct answer is it checks typing before it compares versus it just compares agnostic of typing. If you want your code to be sturdy, let's stick with these, unless you do expect for there to be some mutation, right? And so we're all on the same page. Um, 1 is equal to 1. True? I don't think so. Look at that. False. That's the big difference. I mean, there's a lot of other, smaller things, but generally, if you want type checking, use double equal, triple equals. If you want not type checking, use double equals. I want you using triple equals almost all the time. If something doesn't work and you do this and then it does work, don't be like, heck with that. That's too stringent. No, it's probably trying to tell you something. Let's try to use our triple equals or double not equals when we can. Greater than, less than, greater than, equal to, less than, equal to. I served with another nuclear mechanic, went through nuke school, smart guy, could never wrap his head around greater than and less than. Just a random piece of information. He operated a nuclear reactor. Logical and logical or. So yeah, but basically this is logical and. You're going to see and used a little bit more in Python. I think, at least when I use it, but here it is as well. If I want this to be true, A is greater than B and B is greater than C, true versus D. Does anyone have questions about and or? Functions. Every language has functions. JavaScript is no exception. Declare a new function, use the function keyword, pass in parameters if needed. Easy peasy, easy to read. Function, name of your function, the parameters you wish to put in, and you open up your ugly curly brace and you do your work. Or the fat arrow functions, the new hotness, if you will. This is another way to, state functions. The big difference comes down to object-oriented programming and what, whether it knows what its properties are and whatnot. We're not going to run into that too much until we get to React. And I think it'll be better explained when we get to React. For now, just for now, till we get to React, pick one and use it. If you want to be the new hotness, you do it this way. If you want to do it in an easy to read way, do it that way. That's my JavaScript for idiots, which is what this lecture is turning into. Explanation of these two things. Any questions about establishing functions in JavaScript? I feel like we've at least gotten through that point if we're all here. Conditional logic, your ifs and your elses, your ifs, your elifs, and your elses. Fairly translates to just speaking, fairly well. If you want something, do it. If you want it, it's not true, else do this, do it. If this is true, else if this is true, else if this. A lot of your catch-alls, a lot of your breaks should be put in the else so it always occurs. Remember, else will always occur if the other ones do not occur. If I were to run an if and then an elif, and they both, oh, sorry. I want something to happen. Whoopsies. A is equal to B, L if A is greater than B. B, do something. Oh gosh. My VS Code skills always atrophy between classes. If statement. If statement. Oh, by the way, that worked out. I did what I wanted to. Notice, if this is not true, and this is not true, nothing happens, right? We got true up here because I didn't remember to do that. Notice this runs, there's no output whatsoever because A is not triple equals to B, and A is not greater than B. So it didn't do anything. Again, use case for everything. Maybe you don't want something to happen, but keep in mind nothing will happen if and else if aren't affirmed, confirmed. They're not true. There's nothing truthy. Just little things. Oh, we got an example, the example. I'm not going to rip through that. Iteration. Everyone iterates. It's the easiest way to solve all your problems ever. As you get better at coding, you stop iterating quite so much. You start using, you get real good at JavaScript. You're going to start leaning on what we'll get into at a later date, but is your kind of built-in methods, your filter methods, your reduce methods, your, oh no, what's the other one? Map. It's just a little bit cleaner, a little bit more concise, and you don't have to write out your big, this ugly thing loops. What I do like about JavaScript is, by the way, you're very rarely going to see me ever do this. I don't like that. It's good for numbers, but if I'm iterating through like a list and I need keys and values, stuff like that, generally a list, let me explain. You're always going to see me use let of or let in. I'm going to show you why, because it's nice and clean and concise. My list equals dog, cat, hamster. Key. What's this going to print? Anyone know?
Error. It's gonna error out.
Oh, you think so?
Yes, run it.
I guarantee you're right. Now what's it going to print out, smart guy?
It's still gonna error out. It's still gonna error. Look at your console instruction.
What happens when you're in front of a computer coding freaking 12 hours a day? You start to lose your marbles. I'm not always slow on the terminal, y'all. It's just been a rough day. I'm sick. All right, cool. Good catch. So that printed the index. If I want the values themselves, I'll do this. And it works out great. See, it's a lot cleaner, a lot more concise. I don't have to worry about the length. I don't have to tell it to go up by 1 each time. None of this. It's not going to break. I don't have to keep track of this. I don't have to do anything like if I want to do that. Like this is clean to me. But y'all do what you want to do. Just keep in mind, let of loops will give you the value. Let in will give you the index. Do with those what you please. JavaScript runtimes, Node versus the browser. If you were going to be a JavaScript programmer, it would be good to know a thing or two about how JavaScript actually runs, I guess. I guess. JavaScript on its own doesn't do much. Has to have an engine. It runs in the browser would be its engine. If you're running it in terminal, Node is what the engine is going to be. There are more things than just Node out there, by the way, y'all. There are plenty of other JavaScript engines that exist and are very popular. I don't want to stray too far and say Node is not as popular as it once was. It's still very popular, but there are a lot more common. There are a lot that are going to be used more commonly, I guess, by cool JavaScript devs. Node works though, it's fine. The engine does all the work to transform JavaScript code into something your computer actually understands. Remember, this is a high-level language. We're not close to the metal, as one would say. We're far from the metal. We're writing a language that makes sense to us, that has to be turned into something that makes sense to a language that can then turn that code into something that makes sense to computers. JavaScript is actually pretty fast-ish, but generally, the further you fly from the metal, the slower it is. Sometimes that matters. C++ is around 200 times faster than Python. Does that matter when it's getting done in like a fraction of 100th of a second? Maybe not. Does it matter when it takes a minute to run? Yeah, that's 200 minutes. All depends, right? Different tools. Doesn't make one better than the other, though. All different things. Python's the second best language for everything. You've never heard that term. Like any other high-level language, JavaScript first needs to be transformed into something the computer can actually understand. Machine code. This is a complex process, but the short version of the JavaScript code. But the short version is that the JavaScript code that you write is first parsed and tokenized. You can get into all this. Again, I'm not going to harp on this. If somebody asks you this in an interview, yeah, they're probably really good at JavaScript, and you wouldn't be applying there unless you were as well. Or they're a jerk. A line of JavaScript wound up becoming 4 different items. So basically, everything in JavaScript is going to be read line by line in pieces. This becomes this. That's why if I were to take all of this junk and remove all of the white space, I could do that. JavaScript will still run if you, I don't really want to check with that. Basically, do things like, none of this is going to break anything as we start doing this sort of stuff. Y'all know what I mean? You'll see people multi-line or single line. JavaScript shouldn't be mad at me if I do that. Is it going to run? Oh, it is mad about starting. I jacked it up. I jacked it up. But if it's done properly with proper use of semicolons and whatnot, everything becomes one line anyways. So JavaScript doesn't get mad about it. We're not going to go there. See an example. If that seems like quite a lot of extra stuff, you're not alone, but even the engine is not enough to really run JavaScript. You need a full-time JavaScript runtime, of which the engine is only part of. I don't know why we've got so much JavaScript info added here, but you all can feel free to read into how exactly JavaScript runs, compiles, and all that. I am not particularly interested in that. It has nothing to do with these challenges. Challenges we have 2 of. Before we go into that, I know I glazed over some of this stuff, but you can see what I think is important and what I think is important to you going forward. And you can also see I'm not as good at JavaScript as I am Python, and that's okay. I know how to Google. As good as I am at JavaScript is better than you need to be to get through this course. So that's also the other thing. We'll be coming back to JavaScript before we get back into React. But you won't be seeing JavaScript. You won't be seeing JavaScript for a little bit. We'll be leaning full on into Python. Don't forget it. Don't cry when we get back into JavaScript, when we get into React. I don't know where I'm going with that. Questions, comments, concerns before I stop recording.